Hello everyone, in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this laced beaded Kumihimo necklace, and this is what mine looks like here. So with the materials that I've used, so you have your Kumihimo braid running all the way along and up the sides as well, and I finished that off using these Kumihimo ends and then attached my clasp to them. And then down the sides I have this laced effect with embellishment after we've made the braid that we added in. And then down the front is the same technique but just using more to give this kind of graduated effect, but also then using those bicones to add a bit of bling. So this is what it looks like. So it's going to lie really nicely on the neckline with this laced effect along the sides of it, and then this more waterfall like effect on the front as well, and obviously with the extra bling. So if you want to learn how to make this necklace, then keep watching. So these are then the materials that I'm going to be using for this piece. Now what I have here first of all is a round Kumihimo disc because it's a round braid that we're making. And the cord that I'm using for the braid is this 0.4mm S-lon cord, and I'm just using a black colour to make it a nice neutral background colour for the beads. And here I then have the different beads that I'll be using. Now first of all, the beads that I'm using for the braid are these two here. The first ones are 8 milky seed beads, and these are opaque cobalt AB, the colour that I'm using. So they're kind of part of the main braid. And then also for the braid we need to use SuperDuos. These specific ones here are satin metallic plum colour. They'll go nicely with that colour of the 8/0s that I'm using. So those two kinds of beads here are for the braid. Now for the embellishment after we've made the braid, I have first of all here 11 milky seed beads. This specific colour is Silverline Duracoat Violet, and then also I have 4mm bicones just in a blue colour. And to add in the embellishment with, I'm using my beading needles on my S-lon size D thread here in a purple colour because I'm matching the thread colour with the main beads of the embellishment. Obviously you can combine that however you want to. And then to finish off my piece with, I here have my Kumihimo ends I'm going to be using to the ends of the braid, and then also with them I'm going to be using my clasps and extended chain. So I've got a lot of clasp, extended chain, and then jump rings to attach it all together. So let's get it all together here and let's get started. And then as for the lengths of cords that we'll need, here what I have is 4 lengths of my S-lon of about 2 meters each, and then what I've done is I put all the ends together like that, then I fold it all over in half and then put the ends together again so we can find roughly where the middle is, and then where I have the middle I then just tie a regular overhand knot to kind of keep hold of that and symbolise that that's the middle, and then I just tied a piece of scrap wire around that to help pull it down through the disc. And I then took all my lengths of cord and then I've attached them onto my disc like this. So first of all, where I have the knot there and I've just got my scrap wire, I put that in the centre of the disc and made that come down through here towards the back because that's where the braid is then going to come out. And then I took all my cords, so they've now been folded over in half, and each one length is turning into 2 working lengths for the braid here. And I distributed them like this, so I just put them evenly in pairs across from each other. So I've got 2, 1 around each dot there, on each side of the dot, all the way around just like this. And then to start off with here, I just want to make a little section of braid, so I'm going to start it by taking my top left cord on the disc, bring that down, stay on the left side of the bottom pair, and then take my bottom right one and bring that up, just like that. So that's the first pair. Now I'm going to turn my disc to the next pair here, and then take the top left one from that, bring the cord with me, and then bring that down, and then take the bottom right one and then bring that up, and that's basically the movement. So I'm then going to turn my disc again for the next pair here, and then you just want to keep going like that. So top left one again, and that's how you then build up the braid. So I'm going to keep doing this until I have about 1 to 2 centimeters of braid before we then need to start adding in our beads. Now once I got to that point where I have just a little bit of braid coming out of the back there, then it's now time to start adding on the beads to the lengths of cord here. So this is then how I added the beads onto all the lengths of cord, as you can see here. Now I've also taken a picture of this setup and added that to my website along with the text description as well. So if you need to have a bit of a closer look, you can go there and have a look. I'll put a link to that down description box below. But otherwise, as you can see, we have 6 lengths here where we only have the 8/0s on, so the top 2, the bottom 2, the top one on the right side and the bottom one on the left side. We only have 8/0s all the way throughout, but then we have 2 lengths here. We also have 8/0s, but there's also SuperDuos on them, And that's how we're going to achieve the SuperDuos sitting on one side of the braid, is by adding them like this. So this bead setup here is to accommodate for how I work with my braid while making it. So I start with my top left one, bring that down, and then my bottom right one and bring that up. So if you start with either the top left one or the bottom right one, because they're the same as each other here, then you want to set the beads just like I've done here. But if you start with the top right one or the bottom left one from opposite pairs, because they're the same as each other as well, what you'll need to do is to set up the beads a little bit differently. And what that is basically the mirror image to this. So imagine that you have a mirror in front of your disc, and then you need to set the beads up in that mirror image. So that means that the top two, the positioning of the beads would swap over, and the bottom two there as well. And then we have the side ones where it matters the most, because that's where we have all the SuperDuos on. So that means the top one on each side, all the beads there would actually swap position over. So obviously it's the beads, not the cords. And then the bottom ones as well would swap over, and that would then create that mirror image to achieve the same pattern. So what I also just want to mention is the sizing of the piece. So this braid here, if you want it shorter or longer, you can adjust that by changing up the pattern a little bit. So all you gotta do really, if you want it longer than this braid, you gotta just add more beads to all the lengths of cord, but continue the pattern that's already on there. And you want to make sure to add the same amount of beads on all of them. So for instance, on these ones here, you just gotta add the 8/0s. But here in the SuperDuo ones, you just got to continue the same pattern that's already on there, but just adding the same amount of beads as you do on all of them. And the same principle with taking away beads, you want to just take away the same amount on all of them as well. So when you then have all the beads on your lengths of cord here, it's then time to start adding them into the braid. So then all you got to do to continue your braid here, but adding in the beads, is continue in the same way that we did before. So I'm going to take my top left one, but then as I'm releasing that cord, I'm also going to release my very first bead and let that drop down all the way into the middle there. And then make sure that if it doesn't go in by itself, make sure you tuck under the bead, under all them cords that are crossing over. And then bring that down all the way to the bottom pair here. And then we need to take the bottom right one and bring that up. Release the first bead as I'm releasing the cord, let it drop down there. And make sure it tucks under, and then bring that up. So it's the exact same braid structure. The difference now is just that every time we're moving our cord, we're adding in a bead as well. So we're just dropping down the one bead, and then turn your disc to the next pair, and then repeat. So grab your cord, and then take your very first bead that you kind of run into on it. Let that drop down as you're releasing the cord, and make sure it tucks into the middle there as well. So just like that, and just continue like that. So then I added a few more beads into the braid, and then I reached my very first SuperDuo here, so I just wanted to show you that as well. Really there isn't any difference, so I'm going to do the exact same thing, take the cord, release it from the disc, as I'm also letting the bead drop down. And all you got to really make sure of is that you tuck it under there, and it usually naturally it will sit the right way. So the hole that the cord is coming through will be in the braid, and then you have a hole that hasn't been used that's sticking away from the braid. It's going to most likely happen naturally, but just double check it as you go. But then you just want it to sit like that, and then again do the other one as well. So that's just how you add in the SuperDuo, the exact same thing. Now what I also just want to mention is regarding tension of this braid, because we want the SuperDuos to sit in much of a straight row as possible. Then what I like to do is have a fairly nice tight tension on this braid. And the way that I like to do that is I drop down the bead, and then I grab hold of my cord and push against the bead while I'm pulling a bit on the cord, and that just kind of tightens up the braid more. And then obviously turn it and continue, and it's just going to make sure that the SuperDuos are going to sit more aligned rather than becoming too much of a twist in the braid. So you just keep going like this until you use up all the beads. So once I have my braid ready, after using all the beads here, then I just want to finish off this end as well. So right now I just used the last beads. What I then want to do is basically repeat the beginning. So I have a little section of braid just at the end here that we can then use it to finish off with. So all you want to do is just keep braiding the same way, but just don't add in the beads obviously because we don't have any more left. And the cords here on the end will naturally singe in and then become that little end. So again, also do this for about 1 to 2 centimeters. And once I then have my little braid at the end there with just a cord, I just want to secure the end so I can take it off the disc securely without my cords coming undone. So what I'm going to do is go to the pair that I was due to take next, not the one I just used, and then take cords that are diagonally opposite each other, bring them across the middle, and then tie a knot there, and then tighten it right down on the end of the braid. And then I'm going to take the other two cords from that same pair, bring them across the middle, and tie a knot. So it's just securing the ends of the cord in place here, because obviously we need to keep working with this braid. Do the same with the other pair, just to tie a knot. And also, like I said, this finishes it off securely so we can keep working with it, but also without adding too much bulk to the end, so we can get it into the Kumihimo ends. The last one, and the last one I like to just do a double knot. Just like that. It holds much better than just a single one. And there we go. So here we then have the full braid finished. So by adding the beads and the pattern that we did on the lengths of cords here, we've then achieved the braid looking like this, where we have the eidos all the way around, creating the main part of the braid, but then we have the SuperDuos in a row basically down on one side of it, just right after each other. And this is then what we want to keep working with. So what I just want to do is get rid of all the excess cord. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue around where they're coming out from, cut off the excess, and then the other end I'm just going to remove my wire there. So the braid is then ready for the next step. So here's then the braid ready. So you can see here we have the eidos form the main part of the braid all the way around, but then on one side we just have our SuperDuos sticking out there and kind of just forming a row right after each other. And it's these SuperDuos we're then now going to use to add on the embellishment with. So then what we need to do here to be able to add the embellishment, we need to get a thread ready. So what I have here is about a wingspan to a wingspan and a half of my thread. Just what are you comfortable working with really. Obviously it has to be long enough for the necklace. And then I've just tied a knot on one end. That's going to just be the stopper. And then I put my needle on the other end, and I put a pretty long tail through as well, just to make it easier to work with. And then first of all here, I'll need to take my thread with my needle on, and we need to attach it to the braid to begin with in order to be able to add in the embellishment. So I'm just going to start on one end here, and we need to start where we just have the cord right on the end before we then have added the beads into the braid there. And I just want to basically go through this, just through the corded part, and then get obviously to the end so the knot there is the stopper. And then I'm just going to go back and forth through the braid right in the end here a few times, just to kind of make it nice and secure so the thread stays in place, because obviously we want the whole piece to be secure as well and durable long term. So just go back and forth here a few times, and once you're happy with that, we need to start working our way down towards the beads in the braid. So just get obviously on the side here where we have the SuperDuos ready. So once I've then gone through here a few times, like I said, I'm making my way down towards the beads. So I'm just coming from the one side over towards the front there, and I'm going to be coming out from the braid pretty much right before the beads, as close as I can, and just pull all the thread through without getting any tangles. Obviously there's quite a bit of thread to work with, at least to begin with here, until we use up more of it. And then we need to start making our way in through the beads as well. So I'm coming out here in front of the very first bead. So what we'll need to do is make our way in to the first SuperDuo, so that one there, but I'm going to be using the beads in the braid to do that. So what you'll find is the SuperDuo is right there, the very first one, and then in front of that we have two beads that are set right next to each other, and then after that there's one bead, and that bead right there is the one that's right across from the SuperDuo. So it looks like that, and then we have the two seed beads in the braid that's set next to each other in between the SuperDuo and that single bead. So what I'm going to do is go from the outer bead here in the braid, just go straight through it, but then also through that next bead, the one that's right across from the SuperDuo. So we're basically going a bit of a diagonal there, because this also helps hide the thread, but actually going through the beads in the braid obviously. To pull that all the way through, just got tangled up a bit there, like that. And now I have my thread coming out of the bead that we need to get to our very first SuperDuo. And then to get to that SuperDuo there, this is now also where I want to start adding in some of my beads. So I'm going to bring in my 11/0 first of all, and then before the actual kind of embellishment pattern itself, we need to get from that seed bead in the braid to the SuperDuo, and instead of having loose thread, I'm just going to take 2 of my 11/0s and then just go from the bead that we're coming out from and through the first SuperDuo in the outer hole that hasn't been used yet, and just go straight through there. And those seed beads that we've added then just help cover up the thread, because we don't obviously really want the thread showing. Just getting a little bit tangled there in the thread. Make sure I don't catch the end of the braid. And pull that, and then they're going to fit just perfectly there and make a nice little transition, almost bridging the gap a little bit. And now we need to get into the proper pattern here, still using the same seed beads on the side. So what we need to do now here is add the right amount of beads that we need to kind of get to the next SuperDuo we need to get to. So what I'm going to be using is 12 of the seed beads. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. And then I like to just double check. And then these beads, just push them down there. What we then need to do is the pattern here. I'm coming out from the very first SuperDuo, then I'm going to skip the next one and then go through the third one. And again in the outer hole that hasn't been used, so not the one that's in the braid, but the one that's sticking out. And then pull this all the way through, and then the beads are going to sit just like this, kind of coming around that second SuperDuo. So we're skipping that for now, we'll be using that later obviously. And then we're coming through the third one there. Again we need to add the same amount, so 12 of our seed beads. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and the final 2, 12. Again, just like to double check. Yep. And again, the same principle. We're coming out from that SuperDuo there. We just skip the next one and then go through the next one after that. And just pull it all the way through. And then that's also going to sit just like that and kind of come around that one in the middle that we skipped. So now I'm just going to keep doing this, and this is going to be one side. Obviously we're going to come back and use the other SuperDuos, but for now we're going to go over the braid once and then we're going to come back around and do that afterwards. So I'm going to keep doing this until I then reach what's going to be the midpoint, where we also need to add in our bicones. So this is then the one side for now. So what I've done is I've made 12 of these little loops, you could say. And I've reached down here, which is then going to end up being the midpoint, the midsection that we're going to get onto now. So here what we're going to do is also, like I said, add in the bicones. So I'm going to get one ready here, and they're going to be different amounts for each one. So what I'm going to start out with here is I'm going to add 5 of the seed beads, and then I'm going to add the bicone, and then I'm going to have another 5 seed beads after that. So the bicone is going to end up in the middle, so this is going to be hanging down and be that embellishment and add a nice bit of sparkle as well. So let that slide down, and then otherwise it's just continuing the same way. Coming out of that SuperDuo, we're skipping one and then going through the next one after that, and pull it all the way through here, and then you can see it's going to sit like that. So same principle where we have a little loop like this, but now we just have the bicone hanging in the middle. And I'm going to continue like this, but like I said, each of these is going to have a different amount of beads. So what I'm going to do is move across the whole midsection here, and then I'm going to come back and then tell you how many beads I put on each one. So once I reach to the other side of the midpoint now, this is then what it looks like. You can see some of them are a bit longer than the other ones. So what I have, like I said, first of all, I added 5 seed beads, then the bicone, and then another 5. So on this one here, there's 5 on each side. The next one has got 7 on each side, and then the third one here has got 9 on each side. Then there's 10 on each side on this one, and this is basically the midpoint, so the longest one. And then we'll go downwards again. On this side here, this is then 8, and then there's 6 on the last one as well. And then once I've done these ones here, so after the one with 6 on this side, I then need to go back to do the side portion on that end of the braid as well. So basically I'm just going to be repeating what I did in the beginning. So that means you just add 12 seed beads to your needle and thread, and then skip a SuperDuo and go through the next one. And you do that all the way up the other side here as well, until you then reach the last one that you can use. So once I made my way all the way up the other side here, I've ended on this side, on the second to last SuperDuo. So that's obviously just how it's worked out with the amount that we have of the beads. So we don't obviously have anything now we can skip further to. So this is the last one for this round that we've just done. So what we need to do is get our needle and thread away from here, but then be able to get over to that last SuperDuo, because then we need to start the next section and go back again. But what I'm going to do is we're coming through in this direction away through the outer hole in the SuperDuo. So what I'm going to do is go through the inner hole in the SuperDuo, the one that's in the braid but in the opposite direction. So I'm coming around and pulling my thread all the way through. I'm just getting some tangles there, because I just like to kind of go through the SuperDuo like this, because it just makes the thread a little bit more secure, and obviously the beads that we've added in as well. So just pulling it through gently. And what I then just want to do is, I'm really getting some tangles here, is make sure that all the beads of the embellishment that I've just added in here, that I'm happy with how they're sitting. So what you can do is, before pulling it completely tight, so through here, just kind of keep hold of a little loop, and then you just want to double check everything that you've done. So what you want to do is, you don't want to pull this really tight, so you don't want to grab this and start pulling it really tight, because then they're going to end up sitting a little bit weird. So you want there to be a bit of movement here, so not too tight like I said, but obviously not too loose. So just make sure you don't have any obvious thread hanging, or one's hanging too far down compared to what it's supposed to be with the beads, but just kind of comfortably. And once you're happy with that, I'm then going to pull my thread all the way through the SuperDuo there, and that's going to then help it stay where we want it to be. So then what we need to do is make our way down towards the end again. So obviously this end down here, so we can start again with the other direction. And what I'm going to do is just go through the braid. So I'm coming out from the SuperDuo, and I'm just going to go straight in through the braid here, just directly over to the opposite side, but kind of starting to move upwards a little bit towards that end. Now just kind of try and find a path through. So I'm not going through the beads in the braid, I'm literally just going through from one side to the other, and then again pull that all the way through. And I've just made a little bit of way upwards towards that end, because I'm going through a little bit at an angle there. And then when you pull that, the thread will go through all the way into the braid. And then I'm going to go through it again, so just step a little bit to the side, come through the braid somewhere else, and go through to the opposite side again. Just find a path, and that's coming through a bead as well. I just want to go through the braid itself, because I just find that that's the best way to hide the thread. So I'm coming through there, and then just pulling that all the way as well. Just go knot there. And what will then happen here, when I'm pulling this tight, the thread that's on this side, you want to make sure to pull it so that gets pulled actually into the braid. So you kind of can feel a little click there when you pull it in, and then it's completely hidden inside the braid. So just keep doing this, making your way up to where you just have the braid with the cord. And then here we want to do the same thing, go through the braid back and forth a few times, and then otherwise it's the exact same way to start with the new section here. Come down towards, when you secure it on this end here, come down towards the beads again, and you want to get out from the braid right in front of that very first bead. So that's exactly what we did on the other end here, that very first one there. Go through those two beads in the braid, so that means that one and the next one, kind of diagonally like that, and that's then the one that's right across from the very first SuperDuo on this side. We have the two seed beads next to each other in between them. And then we're ready to make that little bridge with the 2 seed beads to come through the very first SuperDuo as well. So the beginning part on this end is exactly the same that I just showed you in the other one. So just do that until you then reach that very first SuperDuo. And then we need to come back down this side the other way again and add the rest of the embellishment. So now I reach that point here where I'm coming out from that first SuperDuo to get ready to go back down the opposite direction again. I've also added them 2 seed beads. Then we need to start on the embellishment again, and we basically need to do the exact same thing on the sides that we just did, but we just got to then obviously bear in mind that we've already got this one section done. So we just got to take that into account as we're then adding the beads. So I've already added my first seed beads onto my needle there, so that's the 12, the same amount as before, coming out from that SuperDuo. And then we need to skip one, and that's the one that was used before, and then go to the next one. So that's again one that hasn't been used. So we're now basically going to go through and use all the SuperDuos that haven't been used yet in the outer hole. But the way I'm going to do it is I'm coming from that first SuperDuo, I'm going to then come underneath the row there of the previous seed beads, then go through the next SuperDuo that we're coming through, so that's skipping the one, and then I have my needle coming out over the top of them. And pull my thread all the way through, just like that, and then it's going to sit just like that. So obviously this first one is not as obvious how it's going to look, but I'm coming underneath that row of seed beads, go through the SuperDuo and coming out above. And then I'm just going to do it again to show you one more time. So I'm going to add my 12 seed beads, so that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12, and just double check. Yep. Let them drop down, and again I'm doing the same thing now. So I'm coming out from that SuperDuo, I'm going to go around the side and then below, so we're skipping the one SuperDuo, going through the next one, the empty one, the next one there. So I'm coming around the side, going below that little section of seed beads, through the outer hole in the SuperDuo that we need to go through, and then have my needle coming out above. And pull it tight. You can see it's going to sit like that nicely, and you can really start to get that effect, or that lace effect it's going to give, the kind of intertwining in between each other just like that. And you just want to keep going like this all the way down the side again until we get down to the midsection once more. So now I made my way all the way down that side there. You can see you get this really nice lacy effect with the seed beads that we're adding in, and where I've ended up is through the SuperDuo here. That's right before the one in the previous round where we have the very last bicone in. So that's where we want to come out from, because now we've reached that midsection again. So I'm just going to talk through how I add that once more, the same as I did before. So what I'm going to do here is I've already added my first beads, and this is going to be the one with 5 seed beads, 1 bicone and 5 seed beads. So the same as the first one on the other side here, because we're moving in the opposite direction. So again, all you got to take account for is how we're going to add and move to the next SuperDuo. So I've added those seed beads coming out from that SuperDuo there, then coming around, and then below that first section with this bicone in, and through that next SuperDuo and coming out above it. So this section that I'm adding in now is going to actually be the first one that's going to sit right before the one from the previous round with a bicone in. It's going to sit just nicely like that, and you can also then see that graduation. So that's the first one. So that's the one with 5. The next one here is then going to have 7 seed beads, and obviously the bicone in the middle and 7 again. So it's going to be 7, and then we have 9, and then we'll reach the middle here where we then have 10. That's the longest one, and then we need to go downwards again. So that means go from the 10 in the middle and then down to 8, and then the 6. So this one that's going to have 6 here, it's going to be the last one in this direction. That's the same that was the last one on the other side in the opposite direction where we went there. So basically what we're adding in now is mirrored to what we did before. So just do this all the way across, and then we're going to end up right there, basically coming out through the SuperDuo in between the two where we have that first section with the bicone in, and then we just need to start on the side again. So all you then do is move on to then having just those 12 seed beads, and then again just the same direction, go under and come out over all the way up until the other side up here. And that's where we're then going to end on the SuperDuo, which is the second last one, And all you want to do here again is the same thing. Just go through your braid to come out to the end, just how I showed you up here. So the exact same way, because then all that's left to do really is tie off the thread when you're happy with how all of these embellishment beads are going to be sitting. So then just to show you how I finish off the thread here on this end, what I'm going to do is I've gone back and through a few times just like before, but I want to tie a few knots just to finish it off securely. So I'm coming out in one place, then I'm going to go back through the braid again. So just push your needle through, something like that. And then I'm going to pull it through, but instead of pulling it all the way through, I'm going to make sure to just leave a little loop here. And then I'm going to take my needle and then go through this loop twice. And then pull it all the way through there. And then I can let go and pull it tight. And that then creates a little knot there. So basically what I want to do is then take my needle and go back through the braid again. And do this a few times. So as I'm going through the braid back and forth a bit, I'm then also tying a few knots. And then I'm just going to keep doing this. And then when you tie your last knot, make sure to just go through the braid once more, because you don't want to cut off the thread right where you've made a knot, because then it's just going to come undone. So make as many as you feel is necessary until you feel it's pretty nice and secure. And then you just want to cut off the thread. So just like this. And then I'm going to go through the braid again a few times. And then all there's left to do otherwise is then finish off the ends here with your Kumihimo ends. So I already have a tutorial where I show how to do that. You just add a bit of glue and then attach them on, obviously let that dry. And then you have these loops on the Kumihimo ends that you can attach your findings to. So you do that. I'm going to put a link to that in the description box down below. Otherwise, finish off your thread, add your Kumihimo ends, your clasps, and then let the glue dry, and then you'll have your finished necklace. So here I then have the final necklace after I finished off the ends. So you can see down in the midsection here is where we have that extra little embellishment with the bicones that adds a bit of bling as well, and making them that bit longer and graduating them just gives a really nice effect on the neckline, I think. And obviously up the sides we have that nice laced effect as well. The same technique, just using different amount of beads. And then here I have the finished ends, and I've attached my clasp and extender chain as well. So this is what the necklace looks like. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial here and you like the finished piece. Let me know what you think of it. And otherwise, thank you very much for watching.